The anime begins with a little boy running desperately to save his own life. He is fleeing from a huge wolf and finding himself cornered, decides to fight back. However, his attack does no damage at all. The wolf then lunges at him to devour him, but the boy, clinging to life, manages to defeat it with a stab. Next, we find out that the protagonist's name is Jaime, and that from a very young age, he lived in the suburbs, going hungry day after day, constantly risking his life just to survive and get a piece of food. This was his daily life for a long time, until he finally stopped feeling hungry. Now, having become an adult adventurer, the people of that small village are extremely grateful to him, as he helps them a lot. An elderly lady comments that if he decides to stay in the village, she could even introduce him to some girls, an idea he thinks is excellent. Shortly after, he goes to the dungeon gatekeeper to let him know that he will be entering in search of some meat. He signs in, and as he approaches the dungeon door, he notices that it is ajar. He finds this odd, since there were no other signatures on the list. Quickly, however, he realizes that the girl is being devoured by a slime. Without thinking twice, he saves her while the slime takes the opportunity to escape. The girl thanks him, saying that it was a terrifying monster. She introduces herself as Lirui, and the protagonist says his name is Chino no Me Hajime. She is surprised to see that he has a surname, which means he must be a respected adventurer. Even so, Hajime gives her a light flick on the head for entering the dungeon without permission and asks where the hell her parents are. Lirui, a bit sad, replies that she was abandoned and now lives on her own. Hajime is able to understand her and realizes that the little girl is not from the village. She confirms this by revealing that she snuck in hidden in a merchant's wagon. Hajime laments because if she's not from the village, she won't be accepted at the orphanage. On the contrary, she would be expelled and end up in the slums. He comments that these things happen and tells her he's going to get some meat, asking her to stay put. However, the girl, obviously, doesn't stay still. When they go down to the second floor of the dungeon, they quickly come across a huge boar. The little girl screams desperately, to the point of wetting herself out of fear. Hajime comments that it could have been worse and then defeats the boar with extreme ease, leaving the girl terrified. Later, after leaving the dungeon, they go to a small river so the girl can wash herself while he gets ready to take the meat to the village. The little girl keeps saying that the monster caught her by surprise because she lost her footing. Hajime thinks she's quite stubborn, but then Lirui notices that the boar is still alive. He explains that this is because if the animal bleeds inside the dungeon, the meat will lose much of its flavor, so he prefers to finish it off outside. When he cuts the boar's throat, the girl faints into the river. Sometime later, upon arriving at the guild, Olive congratulates him on a job well done. Hajime asks her to inspect the goods, but when she sees the cart, Olive warns him that selling people at the guild is not allowed. He then explains the whole situation. Olive understands that the orphanage won't give her food, nor will it accept the girl. While Hajime thinks of a solution, he asks Olive to wait a moment, as he needs to take care of something. In another scene, he arrives at the church and introduces himself as the adventurer who works for the village. The sister quickly recognizes him and asks what brought him there. Hajime replies that hypothetically, if he were to bring meat and money to the church every month, what are the chances they would take care of one more child, the same age as the others? Without wasting any time, the sister starts listing all the costs involved: plate, food, sheets, towels, and so on, making it clear that just meat wouldn't be enough since the children aren't wolf pups. She asks if the girl is his daughter, and he replies that she isn't. After a brief interrogation, he confesses that it's a girl from outside the village whom he met that day. The sister says it's very nice that he loves people so much, but explains that they are not God and have their limits. In the end, he leaves without getting anything. Hajime laments because he understands that no matter how much you want to help someone, goodwill alone is not enough. In this world, everyone is fighting to survive, and that's why they can't reach out to everyone. At that moment, Olive runs up to him asking if, by any chance, he has seen Lirui, since she lost sight of her after receiving an urgent request. He asks what kind of request it was, and Olive reveals that there was a huge pile of excrement in the marching field, indicating the possible presence of a mountain magic beast. Hajime then remembers that the little girl had said she would live on her own and runs off to look for her, because if it gets dark, he won't be able to find her. He's annoyed with the girl but ends up understanding her situation. If she stayed put, she would die of hunger, and just like him, in order to eat, she has to risk her own life. At that very moment, luckily for him, he finds the little girl, who is face to face with a huge wolf. She shouts at the wolf that she's ready, although honestly, she seems more ready to die than to fight. Hajime intervenes, blocking the wolf's claw attack, and furious, proceeds to discipline it as it deserves. Little Lirui panics when she sees how he tears the wolf apart with his blows. After leaving the wolf unconscious, Hajime harshly scolds her for having done something so reckless, saying that if a weak monster almost killed her, how on earth did she think she could face something even stronger? Crying, she replies that she was hungry, and seeing her cry so desperately, Hajime can't bring himself to leave her alone. He feels frustrated seeing her in that state, but approaches and tells her to stop crying, saying that from now on, she will be his companion. He orders her to follow him, as he will teach her how to skin the wolf and prepare it to distribute in the village, showing that together they will help. Moved, she jumps to hug him, but he asks her to treat him with respect. At night, while the whole village celebrates eating meat, Olive asks if it's really a good idea to ally with an unknown girl. Hajime thinks that being too kind and permissive can be fatal and decides that he won't spoil her anymore. From now on, he will be stricter with her. At that moment, however, he notices that Lirui is eating the best part of the wolf and starts complaining, saying that she stole it. Even so, the girl keeps savoring the meat with a smile on her face. Annoyed, he orders a beer and decides to scold her later. That was the plan, but in the end, everyone ends up falling asleep. The next day, Lirui wakes him up, and Hajime is shocked to see her as big as an adult, although she soon returns to her normal size. Later, while they're eating at the restaurant, the cook is surprised to notice that Lirui belongs to an ancient species. She asks what kind of species it is, and Hajime shamelessly replies that it's a species with big breasts, just like hers. The cook turns red with embarrassment while Hajime smiles at her reaction. Then he warns Lirui that the motto of an adventurer is, "If you don't work, you starve." Very confidently, she replies that she's going to work even harder that day. Afterwards, they meet up with Olive and inform her that Lirui belongs to an ancient species. Olive thanks them for the information and asks what kind of characteristics she has. That damn Hajime answers again that she had large breasts, and Olive asks if he means that her body transformed into an adult's body. Hajime looks at her disapprovingly and then asks Lirui what she did to become an adult. The girl tries to act clever and replies that she just thought about wanting to eat meat, but Hajime scolds her, saying she's already eaten too much. Olive says she'll look into the matter more thoroughly, but for now, she asks what kind of work they want to do, recommending herb gathering since there's always demand for it. Hajime refuses, saying he needs to teach the girl how to fight. In that case, Olive suggests they collect materials from slimes, since they're used in alchemy and are always being bought. Hajime tells Lirui that this will be her task. Overconfident, she remarks that by tonight her sword will be thirsty for blood, but Hajime tells her to stop being ridiculous, reminding her that it's still daytime. Later, already in the dungeon, he says it's time to fight that monster, but Lirui's confidence crumbles, saying it's still too soon to face her rival. Hajime replies that it makes no sense to consider a slime a rival since it's extremely weak. Besides, if she doesn't defeat this monster, she'll never become an adventurer. Upon hearing this, in an instant she charges at the slime and ends up in the same situation as before. Hajime pulls her out of there and says she was being very reckless. She acknowledges her mistake, but with the same stubbornness, she recklessly attacks again. And so they spend almost the entire day like this. Hajime just watches and thinks that, even though the girl doesn't listen, at least she tries hard. He admits that she is strong, because even after being abandoned by her parents, she keeps smiling and eating nonstop. Maybe she really does have what it takes to be an adventurer. Once again, Lirui makes a mistake and Hajime saves her again, saying it's time to eat. When they find a spot with a nice view, he offers her half of his bread. However, Lirui replies that she doesn't need to eat and that he should eat it all, since she didn't work hard enough. Hajime realizes that she did so poorly in the dungeon that now she's too embarrassed to eat. In the morning she had eaten too much, thinking she would do better, but ended up being even more useless than she expected. Maybe the little one is thinking that he's going to abandon her, and that's why she's doing everything she can to prevent that from happening. Hajime wonders what he should do in a situation like this, since all he knows is how to eat, sleep, and fight. He tells her to just eat already, but Lirui keeps refusing. He even considers forcing the bread into her mouth, but quickly dismisses the idea. He doesn't have that right after all. He's not her father. He wonders what he should do, and after thinking for a bit, comments that an adventurer's motto is, "If you don't work, you don't eat." He asks if she's not going to eat, and Lirui replies that she isn't. In that case, he asks that they return to the dungeon. Lirui asks if he's not going to eat either, and he replies that the motto of a companion is not to fill your own belly while leaving a companion behind. That's why he asks her to defeat that damn slime so they can eat together. Hearing this, she gets emotional. Back in the dungeon, Hajime asks her to watch carefully first. She notices that there are eyes inside the slime. Then Hajime asks where she should attack, and the idiot replies, "At the legs." He says no, after all, the slime doesn't even have legs. She should attack the eyes. Lirui then asks how she would do that, since every time she tries to attack, the slime swallows her. Hajime explains that slimes stick their eyes out when they hear a noise. Then he throws a stone. When the slime exposes its eyes, Lirui takes the chance to attack and celebrates, happy that she finally managed to defeat it. Finally, they leave the dungeon and start eating. Lirui is very excited, saying that now she also knows how to defend herself, although Hajime warns her not to overdo it. As they walk, she holds his hand and comments that Natalie's bread is really delicious. So, they move on, while Hajime hopes that the little one will be able to trust him more. Later, when they arrive at the guild, Olive apologizes for not being able to continue investigating the ancient race since the mayor called her. Hajime replies that it's no problem, but Olive notices that the two of them are getting along much better now. Hajime remembers that Lirui was holding his hand and tries to let go, but she doesn't release it and has no intention of doing so. Later, still at the inn, while they're sleeping, Olive discovers that Lirui is a succubus and that during the night they suddenly grow in order to reproduce. And I'll see you in the next video.